This is my demonstrative speech on how to weld a root pass. Now for my credentials, I don't actually have any physical credentials right now. I did have a handful of AWS certifications, but I just let them expire because I have 8 other tests, and I'm just waiting on the certifier to come and put his initials on them at the end of the year. So I first got into welding my freshman year of high school. I did not know what I wanted to do. My parents kept asking me, well, what do you want to do when you graduate? So I did what any reasonable freshman would, and I just did what my best friend told me to, and that was welding, because he said he liked it. And our school, or my school, is really special for welding. The program itself is not really special, but the teacher is very, very special. My instructor was a CWI, which is a Certified Weld Inspector. Other schools in the area just have teachers. Like, they don't really know how to weld, they just kind of walk around and tell you not to burn people. And my school was actually an ATF, or an accredited testing facility. There are only 20 of those in Indiana as a whole. So I was very, very lucky. And normal people have to pay to get certified. That's like the highest is certifications. It's like $200 to take a test. I got all of mine for free just because I went to that school. So what you're looking at here is a root pass. It's kind of hard to tell, but this is the inside of a pipe. Root pass is just the first pass you do when you're welding. You'll weld around the outside of the pipe and you should get enough penetration that you can see the weld on the inside and it's fused together. All right, now for some basic vocab, this is a TIG torch. I'll be telling you how to put in an open root for TIG welding, because I think TIG welding is probably the most common for root passes. It just doesn't have any sparks, so if you're stick welding or something, you're going to be shooting a ton of sparks down that pipe, and a lot of companies don't want that, so they'll have you TIG weld. So what you're looking at here, this is the hose or the grip. This down here actually is the hose. You're just getting your current from here and also your cover gas. Your cover gas is a mix of argon and oxygen. And to be honest, I don't really know what the cover gas does. I just know it's heavier and makes your puddle more stable. Now this pink part here is the cup, and this little metal thing sticking out here is tungsten. And you need your tungsten to be super, super, super sharp, because you're shooting your current through that piece of tungsten. So if it's dull, it kind of just has a mind of its own. But if you sharpen it, it'll just shoot out of the point. And then this is the cap. It doesn't do anything. You just screw it and unscrew it to get your tungsten out. Now, parts of a pipe. So the pipe itself is the parent metal or base metal. These pieces right here are tack welds. All tack welds do is you have 2 pipes, put a tiny weld in it to hold it in place, and it will stop it from warping. So if you weld on the bottom without a tack weld, your pipe will end up doing one of these, and then you have a ginormous gap at the top. So your tack welds will help it from not doing that. And then the slanted part, that's your bevel. This gap is your gap. This edge right here on the very top, that's your root face. And then some other, this metal here is your weld metal. This kind of molten part is your puddle. That's what you're actually trying to manipulate. This here where you're shooting your current out, that is your arc. And this part up here is just your tungsten. And now for the first step, you have to prep your pipe, and a good prep can make or break your weld. So for TIG welding specifically, your pipe has to be super, super, super clean. If you have one speck of dust in your weld, you'll just get a giant hole and then your weld's gonna break. So what you have here is a pipe fresh off of our plasma cutter. That's just what we use at VU. Everyone has a different way of doing it. I've done it freehand with a torch. I've done it with a plasma cutter. This is actually a pipe beveler plasma. It's more automated than a regular plasma cutter. But you see there's all this stuff on the top that's kind of gross. That's just slag where the pipe melted and then cooled back on the edge. It's pretty easy to get off. You can just hit it and it'll fall off. And then this is what it looks like after it's prepped. I just hit it with a grinder and then take a die grinder, which is just a long skinny grinder, and put it on the inside to clean the inside of the pipe. And these white scratches right here, that's just marking my seam. In the field, your seam does not matter at all. You can just fit up your pipe however, but in class, when you're welding on the same pipe over and over, they'll warp. If you drop it, it'll warp. And then you're never going to be able to get a good fit up because you're trying to fit a circle to an oval. But if you fit up the seams and they're the exact same, then they'll get warped the same. So now you're fitting two equally shaped ovals together, and then you'll be fine. And next we have the fit up. So what we use in class is 3/32 rods. It's not really important, like the thickness doesn't really matter, just as long as you have this spacer here. This is actually a filler rod, but this is a 1/8 rod. I just want my gap to be barely bigger than my filler rod, because what happens, it's pretty common if you lift up your torch, you'll melt the end of your filler rod, and then if it touches the pipe, it gets stuck. So then you have to, stop welding, restart, rip it off. It's very annoying. So if your gap is just a little bit bigger than the filler that you're actually welding with, you can avoid that pretty easily. And then I'll click on this. I can find my cursor. Right. And here's a video of a guy putting in a root pass. This specific video, I believe, is dabbing versus lay wire. Dabbing, you put a little hole, it's called a keyhole. You got to open up your weld a little bit so that you're getting penetration. If you don't have a keyhole, you're not getting any penetration. So you'll open up your keyhole, dab some wire in, pull it out, open up a new keyhole, dab it in. Lay wire is you just lay your wire in there in the gap and go over it, and it theoretically would melt and fill itself in as it goes. Then back to the slideshow. All right. But that video also showed a good restart. So what happens when you start and restart with your welds is you have to melt the first half of the weld before you start adding more filler so that it kind of joins together. If you just stop and try and start welding again, you'll have a very obvious stop and start, and then there's kind of a weird gap between the two, and that'll break. And that's